Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Bienvenue dans le Conseil municipal pour la Ville d'Ottawa pour le 11 mai 2022. Welcome to Ottawa City Council meeting for May 11th, 2022. By electronic participation in accordance with Section 238 of the Municipal Act 2001, as amended by the Procedure Bylaw 2021-24. And just for members of the public, members of council can speak or operate remotely or in person. For those who are able to, please rise for a moment of personal reflection. Merci. Thank you. Well, good morning, everyone. I want to begin by acknowledging National Nursing Week and this year's theme, #WeAnswerTheCall. This week celebrates the courage and commitment of nurses and the many ways they support our community. La Semaine nationale des soins infirmières célèbre le leadership en soins infirmiers qui contribue à relever les défis en matière de santé à Ottawa. Nursing is one of the most trusted health professions, and nurses are a leading force in the provision of health services, decision-making, and policy development. Nurses provide accessible, evidence-based care with a focus on research and advocacy. They enable social and economic productivity and help individuals and communities achieve their highest standard of health. Les infirmières et infirmières comptent parmi les professionnels de la santé qui inspirent le plus de confiance et que tout le monde a besoin de soins infirmières. As we celebrate National Nursing Week and we thank the nurses for all they do in our community, I want to take this opportunity to honor those nurses who have been on the front line of our pandemic response. Public health nurses, especially our great colleagues from Ottawa Public Health, have worked tirelessly to educate, vaccinate, and protect the health and security of everyone in our community. On behalf of the City of Ottawa and council colleagues, I want to thank all of the incredible nurses for the great work that they do day in and day out. Happy National Nursing Week, and thank you for answering the call. Well, this time in our council meeting, we recognize our City Builder Award recipients. And because we've had 2 years without the opportunity to meet in person, we're doubling up and we're doing 2 awards for the rest of this council term. This award recognizes people who have demonstrated an extraordinary commitment to making our city a better place through volunteerism or exemplary action. Ce prix vise à récompenser les personnes qui font preuve d'un engagement profond dans la ville d'Ottawa. It's my pleasure to invite Dave Khalil to come forward. I'd like to welcome Kitchissippi Councillor, Dave's councillor, Jeff Leeper, to join us as well. So Dave and Jeff, welcome, bienvenue. And Dave's got a great turnout of family and friends. His mom and his kids are here. And Dave Khalil is being recognized for raising money for several charities and the many ways he inspires people in the community through his music and entertaining performances. Dave is a very talented musician. Aaron can attest to that as our national president. And throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, he's been holding weekly live stream concerts to connect with his audiences far and wide. And I saw one of those, the very first one I think you did. It was excellent. For more than 44 years, he is known as Ottawa's Piano Man and played all over Ottawa and around the country. Pandemic lockdowns meant Dave was unable to play at his regular venues, but he was determined to continue performing and sharing his passion for music. His popular 90-minute shows called Take a Break came to include a charity component focusing on raising money for a different nonprofit organization every week. In April 2020, Dave's first big Take a Break show aired on Rogers TV and raised over $13,000 just in that 90 minutes for the Ottawa Food Bank. And since then, Dave has raised an incredible $100,000 for various local charities. Beneficiaries of his fundraising efforts include Shelter Moves, Youth Services Bureau, the Ottawa Mission, Shepherds of Good Hope, and many more. Dave is a great showman and a great philanthropist. I encourage people to tune in to Take a Break and make a donation if possible. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that Dave is also a golf professional at the Ottawa Hunt Club. He was awarded Pro of the Year in 2018, the same year he won the PGA Canada Ottawa Zone Senior Championships. Dave Khalil personifies the qualities of volunteerism and exemplary action that define a city builder. For his exceptional fundraising efforts and his contributions to the community, it's my pleasure to present the Mayor's City Builder Award to Dave Khalil. And I was thinking back, I think the first time we didn't really meet, but I saw you at Roosters performing with Khalil and Nezrela. Remember Khalil and Nezrela? Those bring back memories. So please give a warm round of applause to Dave Khalil.
Am I speaking?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning, councillors. Morning, friends and family. You stole my whole speech. Seriously, I wrote this thing and you said everything. But you're much better at it than I am, so.
You're a better golfer.
I hope so. Ottawa is my home, so I'm very proud of this award. I'm humbled by it. When the pandemic, I've been playing in bars. I'm sure I've met most of you in a bar. So, well. Somewhere along the way. And when the pandemic hit, well, obviously we couldn't play anymore. So I had to find a way to keep playing because it's part of who I am and my soul. So we started trying a couple of songs on Facebook Live and people showed up and they kept showing up and I kept doing it. And like, as the mayor said, I'm going to repeat everything he said. So we all gathered weekly and Take a Break was born. So my dear friend Erin Benjamin, who's the president and CEO of the Canadian Live Music Association, imagine how hard her job's been for the last over 2 years, took time out of her life to produce my show, all 78 shows, 90 minutes. And I could not have done this without her. And she was the voice of the viewers. So people would show up on the show and make it to the comments section. And Erin would say, well, Kathy's here from Vancouver and Jocelyn's here from Burbank, California. And it was just a fantastic little community started building. And it was really something that was born there spontaneously and organically. It was very, very cool. How much time do I have? 25 minutes? And then our friend Al Saunders, who's here today, I think we've met maybe in a golf lesson, but we don't really know each other. But he's a regular viewer on the show, and he said he sent me a message one day. He says, hey, Dave, for every viewer tonight on your show, I'll donate $1, and you can donate it to your local favorite charity. So we had 100 people that night, and I donated 100. So it was $200 to the Youth Services Bureau. And then like the light went off. It's like, wow, we can do this. So it reminded me of my Uncle Terry Jabour, who was a lawyer here in Ottawa. I passed away a while ago, and he was a huge inspiration in my life. And when he died, I wrote 3 words on a little scrap of paper, and I remember putting them on my fridge, and the 3 words were do some good. So I finally had a purpose. I had a purpose during this pandemic, and I couldn't play live anymore. Live audiences were no more. So I had a purpose. So I'm a musician in the midst of a global pandemic, 46 years playing, 46, not 44. I'm older and I had way more hair. To live audiences. So now we can get together, have fun, and raise money for local charities. So just an example of the Shelter Movers show that you mentioned, Mr. Mayor. Shelter Movers is an organization that helps women and children flee from violent, abusive homes. So during the show, people would pledge dollars per viewer, and then I'd be playing along, and then Erin would interrupt me, and she'd say, so I know, we didn't plan that at all. So telling me that local philanthropist Gary Zed had made a surprise contribution, and the show just exploded. And that night, with me playing piano in my living room into an iPad, we raised $30,000 for shelter movers, which is unbelievable. So, I felt like doing that too. It was an incredible phenomenon. Anyway, so 78 shows later, and many folks have not missed a show. We're still doing them, even though I can play live again. My mom's here, my sister Jody, Kylie, Ben, Robert, a lot of people from my family, Carol Sad, Mitch, my son. Our little Take a Break community has donated actually $185,000 to local charities. So I'd like to thank everyone who gathered today and those who join us on every show. And I share this with all our Take a Breakers, because without their generosity, none of this would have happened. I'm honored. I'm very humbled. I'm not an award person, but I really appreciate it. And please tune in for the next show. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Dave, and to all of your family and friends here for supporting you. Our next city builder is presented to Grace Thrasher, and we're going to ask two councillors, because Grace's work covers two wards, her ward councillor Scott Moffat and adjoining George DeRoos. We ask Grace to come forward, and Grace has family and friends here as well, and we welcome you to your city hall. Welcome. Welcome, George and Scott. For over a decade, Grace Thrasher has been volunteering her time in numerous capacities in support of the Manotick community. For over a decade, early in her volunteering journey, Grace assisted with fundraising and annual events like Shiverfest, the Summer Picnic, and one of my favorites of the season, the Manotick Soapbox Derby, which I hope is going to take place again this year. And then Scott has the winning record, I think. Well, there you go. Who? From 2012 to 2017, Grace served as the treasurer of the Manotick Community Association and was elected president of the board in 2017, and she still serves that capacity. Grace is a loyal community ambassador, and she's accomplished so much through her time in civic leadership and community building. That includes her leadership on Manotick's task force on village core revitalization, which resulted in extensive improvements in the community. She also advocates to city committees and government representatives on topics like the Manotick Secondary Plan, the Transportation Master Plan, and the Ward Boundary Review. She has also been on numerous local committees where she championed letters of support for local businesses, organizations, and charities. Grace helped create the local Dave Bartlett Park Dog Walkers Association and led numerous initiatives that have had measurable impacts on the community. In recognition of her many, many years of dedicated service to the community, it's my pleasure to present Grace Thrasher with the Mayor's City Builder Award.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor and councillors. It's been a pleasure working with both George and Scott for many years, as you know. Dave Plill actually stole a lot of my speech as well, just so you know. I am fortunate. I work with a really good group of people, some of whom are here tonight or today. They make my job really easy and have helped me get a lot of the success within the community. Without them, I don't think I'd be here. I'm going to cry now. I'd also like to thank my husband, who's here as well. He's basically let me spend a lot of time at meetings and be away from home, and kind of held down the fort while I've been doing that. So thank you, dear. The last thing I wanted to say was it's been an incredible experience for me. I think that more people should actually volunteer. You certainly get more than you give in any of these circumstances. And certainly as being part of a community as Manotick, there's a lot of very strong volunteer commitment in that community. And it's fortunate to be able to work with a lot of different people. I've met a lot of great people in that community. As the mayor said, I work with a lot of other community organizations, and I think we all have to work together to try and achieve the same goals. Lastly, I think Manotick as a rural village has some unique challenges being part of a bigger city. We also face some of the same challenges that other parts of the city face. So I appreciate the city has been trying to do a much better job of recognizing rural villages. And I'm hopeful that that will continue in the future, because the character of our rural villages within this city are definitely worth preserving. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you to our recipients. And their guests, and you're more than welcome to stay, but no one ever does. So, Madam Deputy Clerk, roll call, please.
Councillor Luloff.
Present.
Councillor Dudas. Here. Councillor Harder. Here. Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor El Shantiri.
Present.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Kavanaugh.
Present.
Councillor Shirelli. Councillor Eglai.
Here.
Councillor Deans.
Here.
Councillor Tierney.
Présent.
Conseiller Fleury. Councillor
Ici.
King.
Here.
Councillor McKenney.
Present.
Councillor Leeper.
Good morning.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Here.
Conseiller Cloutier.
Présent.
Councillor Kitts.
Here.
Councillor DeRuse.
Here.
Councillor Moffat.
Here.
Councillor Meehan.
I'm here.
Councillor Hubley.
Here.
Mayor Watson.
You see?
You have a quorum, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Confirmation of minutes, adoption de procès-verbaux pour le 27 avril. Carried. Declaration of interest, including those arising from prior meetings. Communications as presented, no regrets filed to date. Motion to introduce reports. Councillor Kitts, please, seconded by Councillor Leeper.
Le rapport numéro 30 du Comité de l'agriculture et des
At the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee, Report 30, Finance and Economic Development Committee, Report 37, Planning Committee, Report 60, Transportation Committee, Report 28, and a report from the City Clerk entitled Summary and Oral and Written Public Submissions for Items Subject to the Planning Act Explanation Requirement at the City Council meeting of April 27, 2022, be received and considered.
Committee reports. Rapport des comités Finance and Economic Development Committee, report number 37, numéro 37 du Comité des Finances et de Développement économique. The Ottawa Hospital Civic Campus. We have a motion, I believe, on that, so we'll come back to that. Item 2, motion, recapitalize Better Homes Ottawa Loan Program. Carried. Planning Committee report number 60, rapport numéro 60 du Comité de l'urbanisme, modification de règlement de zonage 129 et 133 rue Catherine. Carried. Item 4, official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment 335 and 339 Roosevelt, 344 Winston, and 379 and 389 Wilmot.
Hold for a comment, please.
Hold. Item 5, zoning bylaw amendment 982 and 986 Francis Street, modification de règlement de zonage 982 et 986 rue Francis. Carried. Item 6, zoning bylaw amendment 2275 Mer Bleu Road, Councillor Moffat and Gower have a technical amendment. I think something was left off the report. Councillor Moffat rather. Or is it, I guess it's Gower is doing it.
Yep, I've got it. It's a technical amendment to add missing ward councillor comments and correct some errors in the report. So therefore, be it resolved with respect to the report that the comments by the ward councillor section of the staff report, which currently states the ward councillor is aware of the application related to this report, with the comment provided by Councillor Kitts attached as Annex 1 to this motion, and therefore be it further resolved that council replace the words in column 2, add the text GM 2156 in document 2, section 5A, with the words in column 2, replace the text GM 152156 S330-H with the text GM 152156, and therefore be it further resolved that council add the words all buildings on the lot must have commercial space on the ground floor in a separate bullet point in document 2, section 5D, and therefore be it further resolved that there be no further notice pursuant to section 3417 of the Planning Act, and the councillors' comments are included as an annex circulated to council.
Any questions on the technical amendment? Carried on the technical amendment, and the report is amended.
Carried.
Transportation Committee Report number 28, rapport numéro 28 du Comité des Transports. Item 7, motion moving to sustainable care of our public spaces right-of-way front yard beautification motion. Hold for comment. The bulk consent agenda. Does anyone have anything they wish to remove? Councillor Brockington.
Mayor, item 11 or L, which is the Carlington North Veterans Heritage Study. I would just like to make a comment and provide thanks, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Chair. We've just been advised by staff that item N, zoning bylaw amendment 2960 Leitrim Road, is missing a location map. So staff is preparing a technical amendment for that item as we speak, if that could also be held with the will of council.
So your item, Councillor Barrington, was item L? Okay. So we'll come back to both of those, and in the interim, the staff are going to attach the map, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so we'll go back to the first item that was held, is the Ottawa Hospital Civic Campus Financial Framework, local share contribution. And I believe we have one direction to staff and one motion. So Councillor Gower, if you'd like to introduce your direction to staff.
Yeah,
and
I
if
would.
anyone else has any other motions, now's the time to table them.
One of the things that came up a number of times at FEDCO in our conversations and discussion on the issue was to make sure staff are being as creative as possible and leaving every door open to how our municipality could contribute to the local share. So this is a direction to staff to work with provincial representatives from the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Health, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario to request a comprehensive re-examination of the local share hospital capital definition and methodology to better reflect the limited fiscal capacity of municipalities, to expand the tools available to municipalities, and to recognize the contributions to healthcare services municipalities and their partners already provide to local hospitals as part of the local share, and that staff seek to broaden the current capital definition and methodology to explore municipal contributions beyond the current tools defined in the provincial local share plan.
Okay, that direction is agreeable. Councillor Meehan, you have a motion, seconded by Councillor Brockington, please, if you'd like to introduce it now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. If staff can put it up on the screen, I would like to read it and then discuss it. It's very simple. Therefore, be it resolved that council directs staff to explore the option of creating a lottery, like other hospital fundraising lotteries, to contribute towards funding the local share, including the requested municipal portion of the new Ottawa Hospital Civic Campus. So I'm introducing this motion today because I think we all agree, well, I don't think there's anybody who would disagree that this Ottawa Hospital is going to be a valuable addition to healthcare in Ottawa, and it's badly needed. No one would dispute the fact that we must provide funding, although, and it's been recognized not just at FEDCO, that healthcare is a provincial responsibility. The mere suggestion right now that the $150 million that is being requested of the city is it's actually distressing. I have talked to a lot of residents in my ward who fear what this might mean to their municipal taxes. And that doesn't mean to say that they don't, respect the fact that we need this hospital and funding is necessary. But the fact that we're talking about this at this particular juncture, when people are stressed to the max, budgets are strained, people can't afford their gas, groceries are tight. I know that that framework, discussing the framework, does not bind the next city council, but people are afraid of why we're talking about this at this point. And if you look at the wording, directing staff to look at this right now is scary for folks. And I question why we're doing this. If the next council is going to be making the ultimate decision, why are we discussing this today? So I think if this is going to pass today, we have to explore another option, and that is a lottery, much like the Princess Margaret Hospital lottery. We've seen these lotteries in the past, and there is a really great big incentive, like a prize or a cash gift or a prize that can be won. And I think a lottery would be a great idea and would be welcomed by a lot of people who have maybe deeper pockets than the average taxpayer in the city. So that's why I'm introducing this amendment to the initial motion today. And I would urge my council colleagues to consider this seriously and please approve it today. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So questions and debate. Councillor Menard.
Thank you very much, Mayor. On this one, I think it's important we recognize the amount of downloading the provincial government has done to the municipality since amalgamation. We've obviously been burdened now with full responsibility on the housing front. And of course, there's been many other services downloaded to municipalities since amalgamation, and requests for services that wouldn't have been there normally within other jurisdictions. I remember the old Nepean where I grew up, and rural areas, which of course need and request municipal services. A lot of that changed after amalgamation with the expectation based on the one municipality. In terms of comments that have been made previously around downloads, Mayor, I know you've been a big advocate of re-uploading some costs to provincial government when you were minister in that government, and did a good job of that. I think in this case, provincial government is responsible for healthcare in its totality. Cities and communities shouldn't be funding this. Indeed, many communities send these requests back. Toronto has done that. Other municipalities have done that as well. This is a large request, as we heard from the CFO. We've got a lot of debt on the books at the city, and another $150 million for something that is ostensibly a provincial responsibility, I don't think makes a lot of sense. So I would encourage us to, pass the direction that's been put in front of us, but vote against the motion, which would go to next term of council in 2023 for the ultimate decision. We can make a choice in the next term of council, but this is setting staff off on that direction. So I'd encourage you to vote against it based on the provincial priorities that are healthcare funding, and make sure they do it the way they should be doing it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Leeper, please.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I am still vacillating on this one, even as we chat about this morning. Clearly, the hospital is important. I don't feel that I have a good sense today of what residents want us to do. The amount of discussion that has happened on this so far has been inadequate. And, we have an election campaign coming up, and I think a lot of us will be talking to residents about whether or not their city council should be offering up a municipal share. If the answer is going to be no, then I'm not sure today that I want to send staff away and waste their time. If we know that the answer is no today, then we should vote against this set of recommendations. If we would want to continue to explore it, I do take some comfort. The report does say very clearly that one of the guiding principles that would govern how staff look at this issue is minimal to no financial burden to Ottawa taxpayers. So if we vote in favor of this today, I think that we can tell residents at the doors that, you know, their taxes aren't going to go up as a result of passing this report. But I do wonder how much of a significant contribution we can make to the $150 million without a property tax increase. In my mind, it's a de facto no if we're not willing to raise taxes. And my sense of what people are telling me around the table today is that we're not willing to raise taxes in order to make a municipal contribution. I'm going to be listening really carefully to the continued arguments over the next several minutes. If the answer is no, if this council knows that it's not going to raise property taxes in order to make a contribution to something that our province should be funding on the provincial tax base, that's their job under our constitution, then we should vote against this report. But I am amenable to voting in favor of it if I can be convinced that the outcome of staff's work is going to be somehow a meaningful contribution to the hospital funding without increasing taxes. Chair, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Curry, please.
Can I just have some clarification on what the motion is asking? Just that staff look at a lottery possibility? Is that what the motion's asking?
Councillor, that's my interpretation of the motion, and perhaps Councillor Meehan can also comment on this.
So it's just to look at the possibility. And does staff have a comment on that? And my understanding is that we couldn't actually say we were, well, the Ottawa Hospital might itself run a lottery for their share. But I just was wondering what staff thought in early days here of the concept of it.
Yeah, thanks. We're happy to take it away and look at it.
Okay, so I think that if staff are happy to take it away and look at it, then this is not that complicated. They can go look at it if they like it, if they want to. The bigger motion is to come after this motion. Because that's where I would like clarification as well in terms of what the burden to the taxpayer is and the history of local share. Because my understanding this is historical. This is not a new thing where this has been a recent download, but we can talk about that later. For now, it's just asking staff to look at it. If staff are willing to look at it, then fine, let's vote.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just clarify, if that's possible. Mr. Mayor, can I speak? Mr. Mayor?
Sorry, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for the questions. I think my intent was, and I should clarify, is the fact that I don't support what the original motion is asking us today. I don't believe that we should be directing staff to be examining the options right now. So I think my motion should be a substitute motion, that I cannot vote for the motion as it stands right now. I think that that we are binding, whether we say it or not, we're binding the next council in some way by directing our staff to work on this right now. I would like to see this motion set aside and perhaps a substitute motion. If we need $150 million, I think there are other ways besides going to the taxpayers to fund this. So if there's a way to make this a substitute motion, I would welcome some input. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Councillor Curry. You're still on the list?
No, but I'm thinking there's been a change of thinking here, that this is now potentially a substitute motion. Okay, Councillor Brockington is saying no. Okay, fine.
Sorry, Councillor. I apologize. I'll just ask folks behind me to, sorry, could you just repeat that?
I just was wondering about the procedural, where we're at here. We're just voting on the concept of it, but now Councillor Meehan has made some clarifications, so I'm wondering what we are doing right now.
Yeah, well, right now as it stands, it's asking for staff to explore a lottery, so it's not a replacement. And I would rule that this is not a replacement because it's worlds apart between the main funding required by the province and starting a lottery. So we'll have to vote on her amendment, which is to ask staff that look into a lottery, and then we'll deal with the main motion. Okay, thank you. Councillor Eglai, please.
Just a quick question, Mr. Mayor, procedure before I launch into my comments. Councillor Curry seemed to suggest that we were just speaking to the Meehan motion at this point, and we get another crack at speaking to the main recommendation. My comments have nothing to do with Councillor Meehan's motion, all to do with the main motion. Should I take myself off the list, or are we speaking to everything now?
As always, tradition, we're speaking everything now.
We are speaking to everything now. Okay, yeah. So thank you for that, Mr. Mayor. So in terms of speaking, I've got to be honest, I'm not sure why we're spending so much time talking about this right now. I understand that there's some concern around the funding model for community share. That is the working model in the province right now. And personally, I trust staff to be creative in the review of what the options are, and to be very cognizant of the impact on taxpayers going forward when they bring back their recommendations pursuant to this motion. You know, quite clearly, this is going to be a hospital for everyone in Ottawa. It's going to create jobs. It's going to spur the economy during the construction phase. It's going to, upon completion, is going to give the taxpayers of Ottawa a state-of-the-art center of healing and care. There's not a person sitting around this table, indeed in the city, that will not have some personal connection or benefit from this facility. All of us, or someone near and dear to us, is going to end up at the hospital at some point for treatment or care or testing. It's inevitable. It's life. In my opinion, we need to get behind this full on. We need to jump right in the pool and do whatever we can to support this project. To dither on this or equivocate will lead our city to losing its priority position with the province for the construction funding. There's a lot of other cities and towns and regions looking for hospitals and plans for hospitals. We don't want to appear to be unwilling or unable to meet the community share of this build. We may not all like the provincial funding model, we clearly don't, but we can all acknowledge that this new state-of-the-art facility will only benefit the city and its citizens. For the health of the city, we cannot afford to lose this opportunity. I fully support staff going ahead and investigating any and all options to meet the community share obligations. It will put the new council on firm footing, give them a foundation to make a sound, reasonable decision as how to proceed, how to raise those funds within the community. But if we put it off today until the new term of council, until councillors are picked and committees are set and everything else, we're setting this project behind. And again, we're potentially losing the opportunity that's available for us now to create the state-of-the-art center of, as I said, of healing and of care for everybody in the city. So I'm 110% behind the recommendations from staff. I trust them, as I said, to be creative and to be cautious and cognizant of the taxpayer in our city and balance that against the great benefit that this project and this build is going to bring to the city in the long term. So I would urge each and every one of my companions and colleagues around the table, this is an important vote. It sets the pathway, it sets a foundation for reasonable, sound discussion in the next term of council. It lets the next term of council jump into this project, knowing what the options are, knowing what the impacts are, rather than putting it off and risking losing this project and the funding priority that we currently have with the provincial government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. As well said. Councillor Fleury, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Maire. Good morning, colleagues. I hate to go back to the FEDCO conversation because I think a lot of these points were raised at the time. I think they're important, valuable points in reflection of how is healthcare funded. If you recall, Roger Greenberg, who is leading the fundraising efforts, I believe their goal is 500 million, explained to us that there is a big risk that if we don't advance this at this point, that the world-class healthcare system that we want and services that we want in our city are at risk. There are other provincial priorities, and if we aren't tactical and strategic about those investments, we might lose. I think the spirit of some of the elements that some colleagues are mentioning are valuable. They're important, but they're important in the next step. Let's agree and let's send it to staff to do. I met with Wendy. Let's send it to staff. Let's do the review of how do we fund this? What's our contribution? Keep in mind, colleagues, there's a lot of sewer and water work to do. There's a lot of curb work to do. There's a lot of lighting work to do. There's a lot of maybe an LRT station work to do. That's our contribution. That'll be our contribution. So we don't even know what that number will look like when it comes back in the framework. So there's a lot of internal work. There's certainly an understanding from the city on the importance of the investment. What I would say is these are all good points. Get engaged. Let's approve the framework today. Let's sit down with our treasurer and the city and the hospital to make sure that we capture the value and the cost that we will have as a municipality. And I think that there's fair points, many that were raised by colleagues around healthcare and how healthcare is funded in this province. Guess what, everyone? There's a provincial election happening. So no matter the party, no matter the candidate at your door, talk to them about our local issues on this front. Talk to them about why are we locally being nickel and dimed on these things when we're really looking at an important investment for the future of healthcare in our city. So Mr. Mayor, I would ask maybe that the motion that is brought to the table by Councillor Meehan simply be referred to the working group or the framework, because I do think it's a bit early to consider that. I don't know if that is how you perceive it, but to me, the framework is step one, and then as part of the framework, there's a number of tools that could be used, including what the councillor is raising.
If you move the referral motion of Councillor Meehan's motion, I'll second it to staff. There's been, as I understand it, no consultation with CHEO that runs the biggest lottery. And my concern is this is going to come as a surprise to them because there's usually a gentle person's agreement within the hospital sector that this group will do a lottery, this one will do a bike-a-thon, and so on. And I wouldn't want to undermine CHEO's very successful lottery. So we'll deal with that as referral a little later on. So if you want to write that up, that's fine.
Yes.
Thank you. Merci. Councillor Deans, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Well, for my part, I certainly recognize the importance of state-of-the-art healthcare services in our community. I've certainly had my own experience with the need for quality healthcare, and I don't think any of us disagree that this is an important upgrade to the civic campus of the Ottawa Hospital, much needed and very timely, and it's an important project. But having said that, I also recognize that healthcare is a provincial responsibility. We speak time and time again about the downloading that has happened to municipalities and our very regressive form of taxation that does not allow us to have money to meet our own mandate, to meet the needs in terms of housing, road reconstruction, transit services, building transit infrastructure, cycling facilities, pedestrian facilities, all of the things within our own mandate that we are constantly asking upper tier governments to assist with because we don't have enough funding. And, I appreciate that the city staff are looking for innovative ways to raise this money, but it's all money. And if they can raise this money, the choice is, do we fund something much needed infrastructure in our own mandate, or do we assist the province in meeting their mandate for healthcare? And I think that really is the choice before us. And I frankly don't buy the argument that this project will be set aside for years if the municipality doesn't make municipal contribution of $150 million. The City of Toronto has chosen not to make this contribution because they're building LRT like we are and other massive infrastructure projects, and there is limited amount of money, and so they're staying in their own wheelhouse and not conflicting. You know, how do we go and say we need, you know, $1 billion for LRT, but by the way, we're going to give you $150 million for a hospital, which is in your mandate? Like, to me, it's just, we have to keep our eye on the ball. We have to understand what our mandate is and stay within it. And I think the province should be asked to move forward with this without a municipal contribution that we simply can't afford. And I'm just worried that this council is on a bit of an end of term spending spree right now. $150 million for the hospital, $332 million for Lansdowne Park. I understand in the next few weeks we're going to be asked to give a benefit to the airport in the range of $25 million. We just don't have the money to gift all of this to organizations that are not firmly within our mandate. So I would just ask council to really think long and hard before casting the die in this direction, because I think that's what you're doing. Thank you.
Councillor King, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. I won't be supporting this motion since healthcare, as we've heard time and time again, is a provincial responsibility. In the past, the responsibility for ambulances, social housing, and provincial highways have been passed on to our municipality by the province. I believe this continues the disturbing trend of the province offloading the cost of healthcare by stealth. It is evident that the province wants the city to make up for its declining capital investments in healthcare facilities. In contrast to the funds that are used to operate the health system infrastructure, which includes hospitals, and which draws almost exclusively on government resources, capital spending, in contrast, is derived from a mixture of government sources, such as provincial budget allocations specifically intended for infrastructure funds, as well as from donations from individuals and community fundraising initiatives and foundations and corporations, which is incidentally where fundraising should come from. If we are seeking fundraising, I don't believe that government should be running that municipal government should be running lotteries for a responsibility that should be handled directly by the province. While capital spending comes from a range of sources, the proportion of capital spending from the province has been experiencing a substantial decrease in recent years. At one point, provincial funding for capital investments in Ontario's hospitals dropped by 27%. It is therefore evident that the intention of the province is for these declines, for these shortfalls to be made up by municipal taxpayers. We know that municipalities only control 10 cents of each dollar in taxes collected, and our city has to make those dollars go a long way to pay for everything from police and fire protection to parks, roads, sewers, and increasingly social services. Of course, all of these services mostly are mandated, and we have to pay for them by legislation. And as we all know, colleagues, we have little in discretionary resources after all that spending is done. Now the province wants us to expand our responsibilities by way of community share contributions without providing the city with appropriate revenue tools to make those contributions. So hence, now we're talking about lotteries. We all know that this is not sustainable, and as a city, we did not explicitly plan for this spending priority, which our chief financial officer has called the largest request for city funding in the city's history, with households also spending an ever-increasing percentage of their total income on out-of-pocket expenditures on healthcare services, and incidentally as well, long-term care. I'm loath to see the city add such additional costs to the municipal taxpayer and the municipal tax base. As a consequence, I'll be voting against this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Fleury-Deans, your mics are still on, or your hands are still up. Councillor McKenney, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been listening to all of the comments this morning as we go through this. Like some of my colleagues, I've also gone back and forth. The city needs a new hospital. This will serve our community and part of our infrastructure. However, healthcare is strictly a provincial responsibility. We don't have the revenue tools that our provincial government has. If we look at the guiding principles for the financial framework, even though it's minimal to no burden to the taxpayers of Ottawa, no redirection of existing and committed operating or capital budget dollars to the municipal local share, the money will come from somewhere. It's money that the city could expend on our own infrastructure. And we have many needs. We know that. And when we look at what's been downloaded to the city by the province, look at housing, homelessness, look at transit and paramedic services, we already are carrying a burden that our property tax base just cannot continue to support. At some point, we run out of space, we run out of runway, we run out of money. Like our property tax base and our taxpayers at the city just can only do so much. So. I also have to be honest, when I saw this request, I look at what we're building today, and what we're building today is an above ground parking garage in our downtown, and, with the removal of 700 trees. So I think about that, and I think, at an average cost, say an average value of $35,000 per tree, which I think is pretty conservative, that comes out to about $25 million. So I wonder if we're going to ask and request for that $25 million perhaps to be taken off of this ask. There's not, again, it's something that's come up. It was not discussed during the whole site plan. It was not discussed through the whole planning process. And it feels today that we are being pushed into a corner. We are being almost threatened with not getting a hospital unless we agree to look for more funding from our property tax base. And I have to say I'm struggling with that. And I don't believe that after listening to everyone, and I will continue to listen, but I just can't see how I'm able to support the recommendation in this report today. Thank you.
Councillor Kitts, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're all in agreement that this should be a provincial responsibility. I don't think anyone around this table is thrilled that we're being asked to pony up $150 million. So we do need to speak to our provincial representatives. We do need to advocate and express that this ask is an unreasonable burden on our municipality. And if we're successful in those efforts and in uploading this, that's great. But if it doesn't change, we still need this new hospital. We can't risk being sidelined on this project when there are other cities in Ontario vying for new hospitals. So let's be absolutely clear to the province about our expectations. But I think taking a principled stand would potentially be doing a disservice to our residents, putting at risk something that is so critical to the health of our city. And further, we're not approving our share today. We are approving our staff looking at how we would do that if the rules of the game don't change. So I will be supporting the report, and I will be supporting the referral of the motion. I think that's appropriate. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kitts. Councillor Brockington, please.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, there's no onus on the City of Ottawa to contribute. The funding formula that exists now, the 90-10 split, puts the onus on the hospital. The hospital is responsible for raising their share, and the hospital has decided that they're going to take on 500 million. We're going to ask the city of Ottawa to contribute 150 million. And then I believe from the presentation last week, there was another 50 million in other ancillary revenues. So that's a decision the Ottawa Hospital has made. They've decided how they're going to structure this campaign, and they've decided to ask the city of Ottawa for a $150 million contribution. So that is not a requirement imposed on us by the province, despite the fact that the province has decided what the formula will be and that there will be a local share contribution. So I just wanted to clarify that point. As other speakers have indicated, no one argues the economic benefits and spin-offs. No one benefits the fact that we will be receiving a state-of-the-art trauma center and hospital that's much needed in this city for both present day and future needs as our city grows and ages. And people have inserted sort of the personal and emotional arguments about why this should be approved. And really, we need to focus on who's responsible in this. I do want to ask the city treasurer if she is able to expand or give us some examples of what options are being considered. I know if this passes, a report will come out, a detailed report, but we've focused a lot on what the financial contribution might be of taxpayers. And I do acknowledge again that in your own words in your report, Madam Treasurer, you've indicated you want to mitigate this as much as you can. So I do want to acknowledge that. But just so all members of council are aware, what types of options might be under consideration for a City of Ottawa contribution?
Just want to thank you for that opportunity to provide some clarification. And as I said at FEDCO, first and foremost, a tax levy is an easy option for us, and that is not what we're putting in front of council today. We're, as you said, asking for the opportunity to go away and look at options. The first one is laid out in the report in terms of recommendation 4, and it speaks to that special development charge for the new civic site. And the structure of that recommendation and that particular transaction would allow the city to get acknowledgement of a local share contribution with the change as to how that would work. Whereas the way it's structured today, we would not be acknowledged for the local share piece. A couple of other things that we will look at, we spoke to them very briefly in the report. We talked to the relationship that we have with the hospital today in terms of the various sites that they have. We are entering into negotiations for the parking garage at the General, as an example. There may be an opportunity there in terms of some of those lease rates and leveraging an increase in lease to be able to be turned back to the hospital for a local contribution. We may be able to look at either the existing civic site or perhaps the Riverside site with respect to future development there, and see if there's some sort of easement right or either a development right or air right that we could carve off a local contribution from. So those are a couple of things that we're going to explore. And as we dig into this, we'll look at others as well.
So does your report that if this motion approves and you do deliver a report next year, it does not have to necessarily focus on benefits for the current hospital site? You'll be looking at other properties or assets, as you just mentioned. I'm just trying to understand how that can then be applied to building the actual civic hospital.
Yeah, that's correct, Councillor. So if there's either cash that comes from review of those options, they could in turn be part of that local share, which would go back to the hospital in terms of our municipal contribution. Okay,
thank you. Finally, I'll just echo some of the comments that I've heard from colleagues, and that is, again, my residents are very supportive of the build of the new hospital, but at the back of their minds, they are very worried about inflation and how this will impact the city budget going forward. We have a backlog of infrastructure needs that the next council is going to have to address one way or another. We have a transit discussion, both through fares and the loss of revenues impacted by COVID that the next council is going to have to wrestle with. And of course, the actual contributions, if any, to the hospital. So at the back of people's minds, they don't argue, as we've all said, the necessity of the new hospital. It's when you add this all up with everything else that we're tackling, that's where the concerns exist. And then you enter into the discussion about, well, whose responsibility is it anyway to build and pay for a provincial hospital? So that's what I wanted to put on the table today. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Kavanaugh, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll reflect some of the comments of my colleagues. I am